I've never told this story publicly before because for a long time, I convinced myself nothing really happened. But every winter, when the nights get quiet and the roads empty out, I think about how close I came in not making a home and how someone out there knows it. I'm sharing this now because last December, I drove past the same stretch of road again for the first time since it happened. And I realized something I hadn't noticed back then. This was 3 years ago, a few days after Christmas. I was 27, living alone in a small town outside Des Moines, Iowa. Most of my friends were still out of town for the holidays, and I had stayed back to cover extra shifts at work. That night, I got off late, a little after 11:30 p.m. It was cold enough that the inside of my windshield kept fogging up, even with the heat on full blast. Snow had fallen earlier in the evening, not enough to cover the road, but enough to muffle sound and make everything feel muted. The drive home usually took about 25 minutes. Half of it was highway. The other half was a two-lane rural road that cut through farmland and empty fields. I'd driven it hundreds of times. That night felt no different at first. No music, no podcasts, just the low hum of the engine and the sound of tires against cold pavement. I remember thinking how still everything felt. No other cars, no houses with lights on, just darkness and the occasional reflector flashing by. About 10 minutes into the rural stretch, I noticed something ahead of me. At first, I thought it was a mailbox knocked over near the shoulder. Then I realized it was standing in the road. I slowed instinctively, easing my foot off the gas. As my headlights reached it, my brain struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a person, just standing there, right in the middle of my lane. They weren't waving. They weren't stumbling or trying to flag me down. They weren't facing me at all. They were standing sideways, perfectly still. I tapped my brakes lightly, more out of confusion than fear. My first thought was that someone's car had broken down. My second thought was that it was a terrible place to stand. I rolled my window down a crack and flicked my high beams on. That's when I saw her hands. She was holding something long and thin in her right hand, pointed downward. It took a second for my brain to register what it was. A knife, not a kitchen knife. Something longer, thinner, like a hunting blade. She didn't look at me, didn't react to the lights, didn't move at all. I remember telling myself, "You're overthinking this. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe it's not what you think." I slowed more, down to maybe 25 miles per hour. That's when she turned her head, not her body, just her head. She looked directly at me and smiled. It wasn't exaggerated or wide, just enough to be deliberate. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop and not stop at the same time. I slammed my foot on the brake. The car skidded. The back end fishtailed as the tires lost grip on the cold road. I remember the sound, that hollow scraping noise, and the way the world tilted sideways. For a split second, I thought I was going to roll. The car spun once and came to rest sideways across the road, engine still running, headlights now pointing into the field. I sat there frozen, hands locked around the steering wheel, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then I saw a movement. She was running toward me. Fast. Not panicked. Not frantic. Controlled. She moved like someone who knew exactly how much time they had. I didn't think. I didn't scream. I didn't reach for my phone. I threw the car into drive and hit the gas. The tires screamed as the car lurched forward, narrowly missing the ditch. I didn't look back. I didn't check my mirrors. I just drove. I didn't slow down until I reached the highway. When I finally pulled over, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I called the police. I told them exactly where it happened. Told them what she was holding. Told them she ran toward my car. They said they'd send someone to check the area. No one ever followed up. The next morning, I drove past a spot in daylight. There were no footprints in the snow, no marks on the road, no signs anyone had been there at all. I spent months telling myself it was exhaustion, stress, my imagination filling in gaps. Until last December, I had to take the same road again for work. I hadn't planned on it. My usual route was closed for construction. As I approached that stretch, my chest tightened. The road looked the same. The fields looked the same. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small wooden cross, half buried in the snow, about 10 feet off the road. No name, no dates, just a piece of red fabric tied around it. I slowed without meaning to, and that's when I realized something. If I hadn't lost control that night, if I hadn't skidded, I would have reached her at full speed. She hadn't been trying to stop me. She had been waiting for me to stop myself. And I don't think I was the first car she stood in front of. I didn't think much of it the first time I saw him. That's probably the most disturbing part of this story. How easy it was to explain away something that, looking back, should have sent me running immediately. This happened during my final year of college, in early January. I lived alone in a small ground floor apartment in Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't a bad area, just quiet. Mostly older couples, a few students, and one small parking lot that faced my living room window. Winter made everything feel closer somehow. Sounds carried. Lights fell harsher against the dark. The first time I noticed him, it was around 12:40 a.m. I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through my phone when I caught movement outside. Just a shadow passing through the blinds. I pulled them back slightly and saw a man standing near the edge of the parking lot. Not pacing, not smoking, just standing there. He was facing my building. I remember checking my phone again to see if maybe I'd imagined it. When I looked back, he hadn't moved. I told myself he was waiting for someone. After about 2 minutes, he walked off. The second time happened 3 nights later. Same time, same spot. This time he was closer, standing near the sidewalk that led directly to my front door. He wasn't looking at the building anymore. He was looking at my window. I froze. We locked eyes for maybe 3 seconds before I dropped the blinds. My heart was racing, but again, I rationalized it. Maybe he recognized me. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe I was projecting fear onto something harmless. The third night is when things changed. I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, right outside my bedroom window. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard something scrape lightly against the glass. Not tapping, dragging, like fingernails or metal. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam hit his face instantly. He was inches from the window, smiling, not wide, not exaggerated. The same controlled smile I'd seen before. In his hand was something small and dark. I couldn't tell what it was at first. Then he raised it slightly. A screwdriver. I screamed. The sound startled him just enough for me to scramble out of bed and run for the bathroom. I locked myself inside and called the police, whispering, crying, barely able to explain what was happening. By the time they arrived, he was gone. No footprints, no marks, no evidence. The officer told me to keep my windows locked and call again if it happened. It never did. I moved out 2 weeks later. Years passed. Then last summer, I visited Dayton again for a friend's wedding. While driving past my old apartment complex, curiosity got the better of me. I parked. The building looked the same, but my old unit was boarded up. Plywood over the windows. A small notice taped to the door. Unit closed due to structural damage. As I drove away, I noticed something tied to the fence near the parking lot. A thin strip of red fabric, the same color I'd seen tied to a cross once, on a road I didn't like to think about anymore.
I've taken public buses most of my adult life. You learn patterns. You recognize regulars. You notice when something feels off. This happened last winter during a cold snap in late February. I was living in a suburb outside Portland, Oregon, working a warehouse job with late-night shifts. My bus home left downtown at 11:10 p.m. That night, it was almost empty. Just me, the driver, and one man sitting near the back. He wore a heavy jacket and gloves, even though the bus was overheated. His head was down, but I could see his eyes in the reflection of the window. Watching, at first, I assumed he was just tired. Then I noticed something strange. Every time the bus stopped, he didn't move. Didn't shift. Didn't check his phone. Didn't look up. He stayed completely still. When my stop came up, my stomach dropped. It was the last stop. I stood up and walked toward the door. As I passed him, he stood too. The bus doors opened. We stepped off together. The driver pulled away immediately, leaving us alone on the dark street. I told myself not to panic. People get off at the same stop all the time. I started walking. So did he. Not fast, not slow, matching my pace exactly. I crossed the street. He crossed too. I turned down a side road. He followed. That's when I heard him speak. Cold night. I didn't respond. I picked up my pace. So did he. I reached the entrance to my apartment complex and fumbled for my keys. That's when he grabbed my arm. Not hard. Not yet. Just enough to stop me that I yanked free and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't scream. I just ran toward the lit entrance of the main building, slamming through the doors and collapsing inside. The front desk clerk called the police. They searched the area. They found nothing. The next morning, I checked the bus stop camera footage online, out of desperation more than anything. The footage showed me getting off the bus. The man stood up behind me. But here's the part one can't explain. According to the timestamp, he'd gotten on the bus 3 stops before me. But I swear, I hadn't noticed him until we were already downtown. I still take public transit, but every time I step off at night, I wait. Just long enough to see if someone else steps off behind me.